Have you ever thought about why the most powerful people seem to know everything about everyone? Why do masters of power always appear one step ahead, as if they can read minds and predict the future? Why does information flow so easily to some people while others remain perpetually in the dark? This video will change how you see friendship, trust, and the very nature of social interaction itself. Because what I'm about to reveal goes against everything you've been taught about honesty in relationships, about the sanctity of privacy, about the ethics of gathering information about others. The greatest masters of power understood something that sounds deeply disturbing but is ruthlessly practical. They understood that knowledge is power, that information about others gives you tremendous advantage, and that the best way to gather information is not through obvious interrogation but through appearing as a friend, a confidant, someone trustworthy and sympathetic. This is Law 14 from the 48 Laws of Power. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Knowing about your rival is critical. Use spies to gather valuable information that will keep you a step ahead. Better still, play the spy yourself. In polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. Every occasion is a chance to spy. Now, I can feel your immediate resistance to this law. This sounds like the behavior of a sociopath. This sounds like betraying trust, manipulating friendships, turning every social interaction into a covert intelligence operation. This sounds evil. And yes, this law reveals something dark about power and about how those who seek power often operate. But here's the uncomfortable truth you need to face. This is already happening to you. Every day. In every context. People are gathering information about you, probing your weaknesses, learning your secrets, understanding your motivations. The question is not whether this happens. The question is whether you understand it's happening and whether you protect yourself while also learning to gather information strategically yourself. Let me take you back to one of the most sophisticated spy networks in ancient history. In the court of Queen Elizabeth I of England, there was a man named Sir Francis Walsingham who served as the Queen's principal secretary. Walsingham understood that England was surrounded by enemies, both foreign and domestic, that plots against the Queen were constant, and that the survival of the realm depended on knowing what enemies were planning before they could act. So Walsingham created an intelligence network that was centuries ahead of its time. But here's what made Walsingham's network so effective. He didn't rely primarily on professional spies in the modern sense. He relied on people who posed as friends, as sympathizers, as fellow conspirators. Walsingham would identify Catholics who opposed Elizabeth's Protestant rule. Then he would send agents who posed as fellow Catholics, who expressed sympathy for the cause, who gained trust by appearing to share the same grievances and goals. These agents would be invited into the inner circles of conspiracy. They would learn names, plans, timelines. And they would report everything back to Walsingham. The most famous case was the Babington Plot, a conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and replace her with Mary Queen of Scots. Walsingham's agents posed as supporters of the plot. They encouraged the conspirators, helped them communicate, even provided them with resources. All while reporting every detail to Walsingham. When the plot was fully developed, when all the conspirators had revealed themselves, Walsingham struck. The conspirators were arrested, tried, and executed. Mary Queen of Scots was implicated through letters that Walsingham's agents had helped her send and receive, and she too was executed. The plot failed completely because Walsingham had posed as a friend while working as a spy. This story demonstrates Law 14 at its most ruthless and most effective. The conspirators trusted people who appeared to be allies. They revealed everything because they believed they were among friends. And that trust was their destruction. Now, you might think this is just ancient history, relevant only to political intrigue and espionage. But the principles of Law 14 operate in your life right now, today, in ways you probably don't fully recognize. Think about social media. Every platform you use is gathering information about you constantly. Your likes, your clicks, your viewing habits, your location, your connections, your private messages. These platforms pose as your friends. They're free. They're fun. They connect you with people you care about. They provide entertainment and information. But while appearing as benign services, they're actually sophisticated spy operations, gathering intelligence about you that they sell to advertisers, share with governments, use to manipulate your behavior. They pose as friends while working as spies. This is Law 14 operating at a scale that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. Or think about how companies gather information about employees. Human resources departments often position themselves as advocates for workers, as resources to help you with problems, as friendly intermediaries between management and staff. But in reality, HR primarily serves the company's interests. When you go to HR with a complaint or a problem, the information you share is being documented and assessed not necessarily to help you, but to protect the company. HR poses as a friend while working as a spy for management. Understanding this doesn't mean HR people are evil. It means their institutional role is to gather information while appearing helpful and sympathetic. Or think about social interactions in competitive environments. In law firms, investment banks, political campaigns, anywhere there's intense competition for limited positions and resources, people are constantly gathering information. They befriend you, they take you out for drinks, they commiserate about the boss, they appear to be allies. But they're often gathering intelligence. What are your weaknesses? What are your ambitions? Who are your allies? What mistakes have you made? This information is later used against you in subtle ways. They pose as friends while working as spies. Now let's understand the psychology of why this works so effectively. Human beings are social creatures who have a deep need to connect, to be understood, to share our thoughts and feelings. When someone appears genuinely interested in us, when they ask questions and listen attentively, when they seem sympathetic and supportive, we naturally open up. We reveal things we wouldn't reveal to someone who was obviously interrogating us. This is not a weakness. This is a fundamental feature of human social bonding. But it's also a vulnerability that can be exploited. Moreover, we have a cognitive bias called the halo effect. When we like someone, when they appear friendly and trustworthy, we assume they have other positive qualities as well. We assume their intentions are good. We let our guard down. We don't scrutinize their questions or wonder why they're so interested in certain topics. The friendly demeanor creates a halo that blinds us to potential ulterior motives. This is why posing as a friend is so much more effective than obvious interrogation. The friendship disarms suspicion. Let me give you a modern business example that illustrates Law 14 perfectly. There's a technique used in competitive intelligence called elicitation, where professionals gather information without the target even realizing they're being interrogated. An elicitation expert will strike up a friendly conversation, perhaps at a conference or industry event. They'll appear genuinely interested in you and your work. They'll ask questions that seem innocent and conversational. How's business these days? What are you working on? How are you handling the changes in the industry? What do you think about that new regulation? These questions seem like normal professional conversation. But to a trained elicitor, your answers reveal competitive intelligence. How confident you are about business reveals your company's financial health. What you're working on reveals your company's strategic direction. How you're handling industry changes reveals your vulnerabilities and adaptations. Your opinion about regulations reveals your compliance posture and concerns. The elicitor poses as a friendly, interested colleague while actually conducting a sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. And here's what makes this so effective. After the conversation, you walk away feeling good. You had a nice chat with someone interesting. You made a professional connection. You don't realize you've been interrogated. You don't know that everything you said is being analyzed and potentially used against your company in the marketplace. This is Law 14 in the modern business world, and it happens constantly at conferences, trade shows, and professional networking events. Now let's talk about how this applies to personal relationships, because this is where Law 14 becomes most morally complex. In romantic relationships, in friendships, in family dynamics, people gather information constantly. They probe to understand motivations, weaknesses, secrets. Sometimes this is benign, just natural human curiosity and the desire to understand people we care about. But sometimes it's strategic, intended to gain advantage or control. Think about a manipulative romantic partner. They'll ask questions that appear caring and intimate. Tell me about your past relationships. What went wrong? They seem interested in understanding you, in being close to you. But they're actually gathering information about your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, your patterns. Later, this information is used to manipulate you. They know which buttons to push because you told them where the buttons are. They posed as a loving partner seeking intimacy while actually working as a spy gathering intelligence for future manipulation. Or think about family dynamics. A sibling might pump you for information about your relationship with your parents, appearing concerned and sympathetic. How are things with mom? Is she still favoring you? They seem like they're commiserating, sharing in family dysfunction. But they're actually gathering information they can use to position themselves better with the parents, or to undermine you in subtle ways. They pose as a confidant while working as a spy in family power dynamics. This is uncomfortable to think about because it suggests that even in our most intimate relationships, people might have ulterior motives, that trust might be misplaced, that friendship might be a facade. And yes, this is disturbing. But pretending this doesn't happen doesn't protect you. Understanding that it happens, being able to recognize it, and knowing how to protect yourself while also gathering information strategically when necessary, this is what protects you. Now let's talk about the art of probing, because this is the practical skill at the heart of Law 14. Probing is asking questions in ways that get people to reveal information without realizing how much they're revealing. The key to effective probing is indirectness. You never ask directly for the information you actually want. You ask related questions, you create contexts where people volunteer information, you appear interested in one thing while actually gathering intelligence about something else. For example, suppose you want to know if a colleague is job hunting. You don't ask directly because that would put them on guard. Instead, you might say, "I heard that competitor company is expanding their team. Do you know anyone who might be interested?" If your colleague suddenly becomes very interested, asks detailed questions about the opportunity, or mentions they might know someone, you've learned something. Or you might say, "How do you like working here? Are you happy with how your career is developing?" The question seems like friendly concern, but the answer reveals their satisfaction level and potential flight risk. Or suppose you want to understand a competitor's strategy. You don't ask, "What's your strategy?" Instead, you might say, "The industry is really changing. How do you think companies will need to adapt?" Their answer reveals how they're thinking about adaptation, which reveals strategic direction. Or you might share some information yourself first. We're finding that customers are increasingly focused on sustainability. Are you seeing the same thing? This creates reciprocity. You shared information, now they feel obligated to share back, and their response reveals whether sustainability is part of their strategy. The most sophisticated probing uses what intelligence professionals call progressive questioning. You start with broad, innocent questions and gradually narrow toward the specific information you want, each question building on the previous answer. The progression feels natural, like normal conversation, but it's actually a carefully designed interrogation that funnels towards specific intelligence objectives. Let me tell you about a fascinating case from corporate espionage. There was a technology company that was trying to understand a competitor's product development timeline. They couldn't ask directly, obviously. So they posed as potential customers interested in when new features would be available. But the competitor's sales team was trained not to reveal product roadmaps. So the first company got creative. They applied for jobs at the competitor. In interviews, they asked questions that appeared to be about understanding the role and the company culture. What kind of projects would I be working on in the first 6 months? What skills should I focus on developing to be successful here? How does the development cycle typically work? The interviewers, trying to sell the company and attract talent, revealed information about upcoming projects, development timelines, and strategic priorities. The job applicants posed as interested candidates while actually working as spies gathering competitive intelligence. They had no intention of taking the jobs. The entire application process was an intelligence operation. This is Law 14 in the cutthroat world of corporate competition. Now we need to address the ethical dimension of Law 14, because this law raises profound moral questions. Is it ever acceptable to pose as a friend while actually gathering information? Isn't this a fundamental betrayal of trust? Isn't this the behavior we condemn in con artists and manipulators? These are important questions, and the answers are not simple. First, we need to distinguish between context. Gathering information in a competitive business context, where everyone understands that competition involves intelligence gathering, is different from betraying personal friendships for manipulation. In war and in business, intelligence gathering is accepted as part of the game. In personal relationships, posing as a friend while actually being a spy is a profound betrayal. Second, we need to consider intentions and outcomes. Gathering information to protect yourself or to compete fairly is different from gathering information to harm others maliciously. Walsingham gathering intelligence to prevent the assassination of his queen is morally different from a manipulative partner gathering information to abuse and control. Third, we need to acknowledge that some level of strategic information gathering is normal and necessary in social life. When you meet someone new and you ask mutual acquaintances about them, you're gathering intelligence. When you research a company before a job interview, you're gathering intelligence. When you pay attention to what someone says and doesn't say in conversation, you're gathering intelligence. These behaviors are socially acceptable because they're understood as normal prudence, not as betrayal. The ethical line is drawn not at information gathering itself, but at deception and betrayal of legitimate trust. There's a difference between being observant and attentive in social interactions versus pretending to be someone's friend specifically to exploit their trust for malicious purposes. The first is wise. The second is evil. Let's examine how Law 14 operates in politics, because this is where the ethics become most visible and most controversial. Politicians constantly gather information about opponents, allies, and voters. They conduct polls. They analyze voting records, they track social media, they have operatives attend opposition events. Some of this is legitimate democratic activity. Voters have a right to know about candidates, and candidates have a right to understand voters. But the line gets crossed when deception and betrayal enter. Think about the Watergate scandal. Operatives working for President Nixon's re-election campaign broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to gather intelligence. They literally spied on political opponents. This crossed the line from legitimate campaign research into criminal activity. Why? Because it involved deception, breaking the law, and violating spaces where there was a legitimate expectation of privacy. Contrast this with opposition research conducted through public records, through tracking public statements, through attending public events. This is legitimate information gathering that doesn't involve deception or betrayal of trust. The difference is in the methods, not in the goal of gathering information about opponents. Now let's talk about how to defend yourself against Law 14, because if you understand that people are constantly gathering information, you need to develop defensive strategies. The first defense is awareness. Recognize that people are always observing, always asking questions, always gathering information. This doesn't mean being paranoid. It means being thoughtful about what you reveal and to whom. The second defense is compartmentalization. Don't reveal everything to everyone. Different people should know different things about you based on their relationship to you and their need to know. Your close friends might know personal struggles. Your professional contacts might know career ambitions. But not everyone needs to know everything. Compartmentalizing information limits the damage if someone betrays your trust or uses information against you. The third defense is recognizing probing questions and deflecting them skillfully. When someone asks a question that seems designed to extract specific information, especially in a professional or competitive context, you can deflect without being rude. That's an interesting question. Why do you ask? This turns the tables, making them explain their interest, which often reveals their ulterior motive. Or you can give vague, non-committal answers. Things are going well. How about with you? You've answered without actually revealing anything useful. The fourth defense is strategic misinformation. If you suspect someone is gathering intelligence about you with bad intentions, you can feed them false information. In intelligence work, this is called a canary trap. You tell different people different versions of sensitive information. If the information leaks, you know who leaked it based on which version appears. This is advanced, but it shows that you can turn Law 14 against those who use it against you. Let me tell you about a businessman who suspected someone in his company was leaking information to competitors. He couldn't figure out who it was. So he used a canary trap. He told different executives slightly different versions of an upcoming strategic initiative. He made sure each version was unique to the person he told. Then he waited. When a competitor responded to one specific version of the strategy, he knew exactly who had leaked it. He posed as a trusting CEO while actually working as a spy within his own organization, using Law 14 to catch someone else using Law 14 against him. Now let's discuss the positive applications of Law 14, because this law is not purely about deception and manipulation. Understanding how to gather information strategically is essential for success in almost any field. Sales professionals need to understand customer needs and concerns. Therapists need to understand patient psychology and history. Lawyers need to understand opposing arguments and witness credibility. Teachers need to understand student comprehension and learning styles. All of these require strategic information gathering through conversation and observation. The key is gathering information ethically and using it constructively. A good therapist probes sensitively to understand a patient's issues, not to manipulate or exploit them, but to help them heal. A good salesperson asks questions to understand customer needs, not to manipulate them into buying something harmful, but to match them with products that genuinely serve their interests. A good teacher probes student understanding, not to embarrass students, but to identify where additional instruction is needed. This is Law 14 used ethically. You're gathering information through strategic questioning and observation, yes. But you're doing it transparently within a relationship where the purpose is understood and mutually beneficial. The therapist's role as information gatherer is explicit. The salesperson's interest in your needs is understood as part of the sales process. The teacher's questions are clearly for educational purposes. There's no pretense of being something you're not. The unethical version of Law 14 is when the information gathering is hidden, when you pose as something you're not, when the information is used for purposes the person wouldn't consent to if they understood what was happening. This is the line between wise information gathering and manipulative spying. Let me give you a historical example that shows both the power and the danger of Law 14. During the Cold War, intelligence agencies on both sides recruited people who could pose as friends and colleagues while actually being spies. Some of the most successful spies were those who built genuine relationships over years or even decades, earning trust, becoming confidants, all while reporting everything to their handlers. These spies were often betraying people who genuinely trusted them, who considered them friends. The most famous case is Kim Philby, a British intelligence officer who was actually a Soviet spy. Philby worked for British intelligence for years, rising to senior positions, all while passing secrets to the Soviets. He posed as a loyal British officer while working as a Soviet spy. His betrayal damaged British intelligence catastrophically and led to the deaths of numerous agents. Philby's case demonstrates the ultimate danger of Law 14. When someone poses as a friend while actually being a spy, the betrayal can be devastating, the damage immense, the consequences catastrophic. But Philby's case also shows the power of Law 14. By posing as a friend, by earning trust, by appearing loyal, Philby was able to gather intelligence for decades that he never could have gathered through any other means. His success was entirely dependent on his ability to maintain the facade of friendship while secretly serving opposing interests. This is Law 14 at its most effective and most morally reprehensible. Now let's talk about social intelligence, because this is really what Law 14 is about at its core. Social intelligence is the ability to understand what people are thinking and feeling, to navigate social situations effectively, to gather information from interactions. People with high social intelligence are naturally good at Law 14, though they might not think of it in those terms. They notice things others miss. They ask questions that reveal information. They read between the lines. They understand motivations and hidden agendas. Developing social intelligence means becoming more observant, more attentive to verbal and nonverbal cues, more skilled at asking questions, more able to read social situations. These skills are valuable in every area of life. They help you understand your children better, navigate workplace politics, identify trustworthy friends, avoid manipulative people, succeed in negotiations. Social intelligence is not about manipulation. It's about understanding the social world more clearly so you can navigate it more effectively. Think about body language. People communicate as much or more through body language as through words. If you pay attention, you can gather enormous amounts of information. Does someone lean in when you mention a topic, showing interest? Do they look away, showing discomfort or disinterest? Do their words say yes while their body says no? Do they seem nervous, confident, bored, excited? All of this is information. You're not being manipulative by noticing it. You're being observant. Or think about what people don't say. In any conversation, what's left unsaid is often as informative as what's said. If someone describes their job but never mentions colleagues, they might have difficult work relationships. If they talk about family but never mention their spouse, there might be marital problems. If they discuss their achievements but never mention struggles, they might be insecure or hiding something. Noticing omissions is a form of information gathering that doesn't require any questions at all. Let me tell you about the concept of active listening used by skilled interrogators, negotiators, and therapists. Active listening means paying complete attention to what someone is saying, reflecting it back to ensure understanding, asking follow-up questions that dig deeper. So what I hear you saying is that right? Tell me more about that. How did that make you feel? These techniques appear empathetic and engaged, which they are. But they're also information-gathering techniques. By appearing completely interested and sympathetic, you encourage people to reveal more and more. This is Law 14 in a form that can be either therapeutic or manipulative depending on the context and intention. Now we need to address the question of whether you should use Law 14 yourself. Should you pose as a friend to gather information? Should you probe people strategically? Should you use social interactions as opportunities for intelligence gathering? The answer depends on your context, your intentions, and your ethics. In competitive professional contexts, strategic information gathering is expected and appropriate. You should absolutely pay attention to what competitors reveal, should ask strategic questions in business conversations, should gather intelligence about markets and opportunities. This is not unethical. This is professional competence. In personal relationships, the ethics are more complex. You should be observant and attentive, should understand the people in your life, should notice warning signs of problems or deception. But you shouldn't pose as a friend to people you're actually planning to exploit. You shouldn't manipulate intimate relationships for strategic advantage. The line is between wise observation and betrayal of trust. The safest approach is transparency about your role and your interests. If you're in business, people understand you're gathering information for competitive purposes. If you're negotiating, both sides understand that information is being gathered and used strategically. If you're in a helping profession, your role as information gatherer is explicit. It's when the information gathering is hidden, when you're pretending to be something you're not, that you cross into unethical territory. Let me leave you with a final thought about Law 14. The law poses as instruction about how to gather information, but it's actually a warning about how others gather information about you. The real value of understanding this law is not in becoming a better spy. It's in recognizing when you're being spied upon. It's in understanding that friendly curiosity might have ulterior motives. It's in developing appropriate defenses against those who would exploit your openness. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. How much are you revealing to people who might not have your best interests at heart? How many questions are you answering without considering why they're being asked? How often do you trust people's stated intentions without considering their actual motivations? These questions aren't meant to make you paranoid. They're meant to make you thoughtful and strategic about information. In the end, Law 14 reveals a fundamental truth about power and information. Knowledge is power, and those who gather knowledge strategically have advantages over those who naively reveal everything. You don't need to become a spy. You don't need to betray friendships. But you do need to understand that others are observing, others are asking questions, others are gathering information about you constantly. And you need to decide what you reveal, to whom, and why. That awareness, that strategic thinking about information, that's the real lesson of Law 14. Not how to spy on others, but how to protect yourself in a world where everyone is gathering intelligence, where every interaction is potentially revealing, where posing as a friend while working as a spy is not the exception but the rule. The world of information gathering extends far beyond conscious deception. Every human interaction involves an exchange of information, and those who understand this exchange navigate life with a significant advantage. Think about how children naturally use Law 14 without ever being taught. A child learns quickly that asking their tired parent for something requires different tactics than asking a rested parent. They probe. They test boundaries. They gather information about moods and timing. This isn't malicious. It's survival instinct combined with social intelligence. As we mature, most people are taught to suppress these instincts in the name of honesty and directness. We're told that probing is rude, that strategic questioning is manipulative, that we should be straightforward in all our dealings. This socialization serves society by making interactions more predictable and reducing conflict. But it also makes those who follow these rules vulnerable to those who don't. Consider the professional interrogator, whether in law enforcement or intelligence services. These individuals are trained in techniques that would shock most people with their sophistication. They understand that people have a psychological need to fill silence, so they ask a question and then simply wait, letting uncomfortable silence pressure the subject into revealing more than they intended. They understand that people want to appear knowledgeable and important, so they express admiration and curiosity, prompting the subject to show off by revealing information. They understand that people trust those who share vulnerabilities, so they reveal minor personal details to create false intimacy that encourages reciprocal revelation. These techniques work because they exploit fundamental features of human psychology. We are social creatures who bond through shared information. When someone shows interest in us, we naturally want to engage and share. When someone reveals something about themselves, we feel obligated to reciprocate. When someone creates silence, we feel compelled to fill it. These aren't weaknesses. They're the mechanisms that allow human societies to function. But they're also vulnerabilities that can be exploited. Let's examine how Law 14 operates in the digital age, because technology has amplified the power of information gathering beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. Your smartphone is a spy device that would have amazed Cold War intelligence agencies. It tracks your location constantly. It records your searches and browsing history. It monitors your communications. It analyzes your photos to identify faces and places. It listens for wake words, meaning it's processing audio even when you think it's off. Every app you install is gathering data about your behavior, your preferences, your relationships, your schedule. These companies pose as service providers, as tools to make your life easier and more connected. And they do provide genuine value. But they're also conducting the most comprehensive surveillance operation in human history. They know where you go, who you talk to, what you buy, what you read, what you watch, what you search for in your most private moments. They know your political views, your health concerns, your relationship status, your financial situation. They build profiles of you that are more complete than you could create yourself because they track patterns you're not consciously aware of. This is Law 14 operating at a civilizational scale. These companies pose as friends, as benign services, as tools for connection and convenience. But they work as spies, gathering comprehensive intelligence about billions of people. And this intelligence is used to manipulate your behavior, to influence your purchases, to shape your political views, To keep you engaged with their platforms even when that engagement harms your well-being. The defense against this requires both awareness and action. You need to understand that every digital interaction is being monitored and analyzed. You need to make conscious decisions about what information you're willing to trade for what services. You need to use privacy tools, encryption, and selective disclosure. You need to recognize that in the digital age, Law 14 isn't just about individual relationships. It's about the relationship between individuals and massive corporations and governments that have unprecedented surveillance capabilities. Now let's talk about how Law 14 applies to leadership and management, because leaders who understand information gathering have enormous advantages. The best leaders don't just issue commands and expect reports. They gather information informally, continuously, through multiple channels. They practice what's sometimes called management by walking around, where they have casual conversations with people at all levels of the organization. These conversations seem friendly and informal, but they're actually sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations. The leader who walks through the office and asks "How's it going?" isn't just being friendly. They're observing body language, tone of voice, stress levels. They're probing for problems, for morale issues, for early warnings of difficulties. The leader who takes an employee to lunch and asks about their career goals isn't just being supportive. They're gathering intelligence about retention risk, about ambition, about potential conflicts. The leader who asks "What do you think about the new policy?" isn't just seeking opinions. They're gauging support, identifying resistance, understanding how messages are being received. This kind of information gathering makes leaders more effective because they understand what's actually happening in their organizations, not just what formal reports tell them. Reports can be sanitized, spun, delayed. But direct observation and casual conversation reveal reality. The leader who practices Law 14 understands their organization at a level that leaders who rely only on formal channels never achieve. However, there's a danger here. If employees realize that every friendly conversation is actually intelligence gathering, if they feel spied upon rather than engaged with, trust breaks down. The art is in being genuinely interested in people while also gathering strategic information. The best leaders care about their people and gather information. These aren't contradictory. Understanding what people are thinking and feeling helps you lead them more effectively, which serves everyone's interests if you're a good leader. Let's examine the role of gossip in Law 14, because gossip is one of the most powerful information-gathering mechanisms in human societies. Gossip has a bad reputation. We're taught that gossip is mean, petty, unproductive. But from an anthropological perspective, gossip serves crucial social functions. It's how information spreads in communities. It's how reputations are built and destroyed. It's how norms are enforced. And it's how people gather intelligence about others without direct interrogation. When someone tells you gossip about another person, they're giving you information that might be valuable. But they're also revealing information about themselves. What they choose to gossip about reveals what they value and what they fear. How they frame the gossip reveals their biases and loyalties. Whether they gossip reliably or spread false information reveals their trustworthiness. A sophisticated practitioner of Law 14 listens to gossip not just for the ostensible content, but for what it reveals about the gossiper. Moreover, gossip networks can be cultivated strategically. If you're known as someone who listens to gossip without judgment, who can be trusted not to reveal sources, who provides interesting information in return, you become a node in the gossip network. Information flows to you. You learn things that others don't know. This gives you advantages in understanding social dynamics, in predicting conflicts, in identifying opportunities and threats. But there's a danger in becoming too associated with gossip. If you're seen as someone who only gathers information without contributing, if you're perceived as using information maliciously, if you violate confidences, you'll be excluded from the information network. The art is in being a trusted participant in the information ecosystem, someone who both gives and receives, who uses information wisely rather than destructively. Consider how Law 14 operates in romantic relationships and dating. When you're interested in someone, you naturally want to know more about them. You ask questions. You pay attention to what they say and don't say. You might check their social media, talk to mutual friends, observe how they interact with others. This is normal and healthy. You're gathering information to assess compatibility, to understand who they are, to decide if you want to invest emotionally. But this can cross into unhealthy territory. Excessive social media stalking, interrogating their friends behind their back, going through their phone or email, these are violations of privacy that indicate controlling or obsessive behavior. The line between healthy information gathering and unhealthy spying in romantic contexts is about respect for privacy and consent. It's appropriate to learn about someone through public information and voluntary disclosure. It's inappropriate to violate their privacy or manipulate them into revealing things they want to keep private. There's also the question of deception in dating. People often present idealized versions of themselves early in relationships. They emphasize positive qualities and hide flaws. They're strategic about what they reveal and when. Is this Law 14? Yes, in a sense. Everyone is gathering information while managing the information they provide. The early stages of romantic relationships are a mutual information gathering operation where both parties are simultaneously revealing and concealing, probing and defending. The healthiest relationships emerge when this process gradually evolves toward mutual transparency. As trust builds, both people reveal more, protect less. The information gathering becomes less strategic and more genuine. But the initial stages necessarily involve strategic disclosure and careful observation. This isn't dishonesty. It's prudent caution while trust is being established. Let's discuss how different cultures approach Law 14 differently. In some cultures, particularly individualistic Western cultures, direct questioning is seen as appropriate. Americans, for instance, often ask direct personal questions early in relationships in ways that might seem intrusive to people from more reserved cultures. This directness is a form of information gathering that relies on cultural norms of openness. In contrast, many Asian cultures place higher value on indirect communication and reading between the lines. Questions are more subtle. Information is conveyed through implications rather than direct statements. Understanding what's really being said requires attention to context, tone, what's not being said. In these cultures, Law 14 operates through more sophisticated indirection. The person who can probe subtly and read implicit communication has advantages. Neither approach is superior. They're different strategies for the same goal, understanding others while managing what you reveal. But cultural differences mean that techniques effective in one culture might be inappropriate in another. The American who asks direct probing questions in a Japanese context might be seen as rude and will receive evasive non-answers. The Japanese person who communicates indirectly in an American context might be seen as evasive or unclear. Understanding these cultural differences is itself a form of information gathering. When you interact across cultures, observing communication styles tells you a lot about cultural values, about what's considered appropriate, about how information flows. This cultural intelligence is increasingly valuable in a globalized world where cross-cultural interaction is common. Now let's address the question of intuition and gut feelings in relation to Law 14. Many people have strong intuitive responses to others. They meet someone and immediately feel trust or distrust, comfort or unease. This intuition is often dismissed as irrational or unreliable. But psychological research suggests that intuition is actually rapid unconscious processing of enormous amounts of information. When you meet someone and feel immediate distrust, your unconscious mind might be noticing micro-expressions, tone of voice patterns, body language inconsistencies, verbal cues that don't consciously register but trigger warning signals. Your intuition is Law 14 operating at an unconscious level. Your mind is gathering and analyzing information faster than conscious thought. The key is learning to trust your intuition while also questioning it. Intuition can be biased by prejudice, by past trauma, by pattern matching that doesn't apply to the current situation. But it can also be recognizing genuine danger or deception that conscious analysis misses. The wise practitioner of Law 14 pays attention to gut feelings while also seeking conscious confirmation. This means when you have a strong intuitive response to someone, you probe more carefully. You pay extra attention. You look for evidence that confirms or contradicts the intuitive response. You don't blindly trust or distrust. You use intuition as a signal to gather more information consciously and carefully. Let me tell you about the concept of parallel construction used in intelligence and law enforcement. This is when information is gathered through one method, often legally questionable or secret, but then the investigators work backward to find a legal, public way to obtain the same information. They pose as if they discovered information through legitimate investigation when actually they discovered it through surveillance or informants. This is Law 14 at an institutional level. The organization poses as if it's conducting normal investigation while actually it's using secret sources. The purpose is both to hide investigative methods and to ensure evidence is admissible in court. Whether you think this is appropriate depends on your views about privacy, security, and the proper limits of government power. But it demonstrates how deeply Law 14 is embedded in institutional practice. In your personal and professional life, you might engage in similar parallel construction without thinking of it in those terms. You might learn something through gossip or informal channels, but when you need to act on that information, you find a way to verify it through legitimate means so you can reference it without revealing your source. This protects your information sources while allowing you to use the information strategically. Let's talk about the future of Law 14 in an age of artificial intelligence. AI systems are becoming incredibly sophisticated at gathering and analyzing information about human behavior. They can predict your preferences, your political views, your health risks, your likelihood of changing jobs, based on analyzing patterns in your digital behavior. They can identify potential criminals, potential terrorists, potential credit risks, by analyzing massive datasets that humans couldn't possibly process. This raises profound questions. When AI gathers information about you and makes predictions about your behavior, is that Law 14? When algorithms decide what content you see, what prices you're offered, whether you're hired or given a loan, based on information gathered about you that you're not aware of, are you being spied upon? These questions don't have easy answers, but they're increasingly urgent as AI becomes more powerful and more pervasive. The defense against AI-powered information gathering is limited because the systems are so complex and opaque. You often don't know what information is being gathered or how it's being used. But awareness helps. Understanding that AI is constantly analyzing your behavior, that your digital footprint is being monetized and used to manipulate you, that predictions about you are being made based on data you didn't knowingly provide, this awareness at least allows you to make more informed choices about your digital life. In conclusion, Law 14 reveals that information is the currency of power, that gathering information strategically is essential for success, and that those who understand how information flows have advantages over those who naively reveal everything. But it also reveals that we live in an age of unprecedented surveillance, where information gathering happens at scales that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. The path forward requires balance. You need to gather information strategically to navigate competitive environments successfully. But you also need to protect your information from those who would use it against you. You need to be observant and probe carefully. But you also need to respect privacy and avoid becoming manipulative or paranoid. You need to understand that people are always gathering information about you. But you don't need to assume everyone is an enemy or that all relationships are purely strategic. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you become more observant, more strategic in how you gather and protect information? Will you recognize when others are probing you and develop appropriate defenses? Will you use information gathering to compete effectively while maintaining ethical boundaries? The choice is yours. But now you understand that every interaction is an information exchange, that posing as a friend while working as a spy is not exceptional but ordinary, and that those who understand this navigate the world with clarity that others lack.